Hey, old man, this table isn't for people like you. The waiter's voice snapped through the cafe, cruel and loud enough for everyone to hear. Forks paused midair, cups rattled on saucers, and whispers spread. Selena, sitting just a few tables away with her laptop open, froze. Her eyes darted to the frail man across from her. His hands trembled as he tried to lift his cup, but his silence only made the humiliation worse. The waiter leaned closer, sneering. You should be in a shelter, not here. This cafe is for paying customers. Gasps rippled across the room. A young woman near the counter whispered, Did he really just say that? Another man muttered, Why isn't anyone stopping this? Selena's stomach twisted. She could feel her pulse in her throat, anger mixing with helplessness. She started to rise from her chair, ready to speak. But before she could, a voice came from the corner booth. Calm, steady, and cold. That's my father you're mocking. The room went dead silent. Selena's breath caught as the young man stepped forward, his eyes locked on the waiter. Nobody knew it yet, but this moment, the clash of cruelty, silence, and truth, was about to change everything. If you want to know what happened after that shocking moment, stick around. This story will leave you speechless. Don't forget to hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss a powerful story like this one. Selena was 27 years old, a woman with long dark hair tied back in a loose knot and eyes that carried both fire and sadness. She had grown up in the small town of Oak Ridge, a place where people judged you quickly and forgave you slowly. Her childhood had been a heavy one. Her father had walked away when she was 9, leaving her mother to work 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. That wound never healed. Selena had promised herself she would never turn away from people who were weak, tired, or forgotten. That morning, she walked into a cafe she rarely visited, a quiet corner spot downtown where the smell of roasted beans mixed with the sound of clinking cups. She came there to breathe, to write her thoughts, and to prepare for her shift as a social worker at the senior center. She had no idea the scene she was about to witness would haunt her for years. At the counter stood an old man. His coat was torn at the shoulder, his shoes worn down flat. He reached into his pockets slowly, his hands shaking, searching for his wallet. The young waiter at the register leaned forward, tapping his foot. Come on, old man. The waiter sneered loudly enough for the customers in line to hear. People got things to do. If you don't have money, you shouldn't be here. A few customers chuckled. Selena froze. Her chest tightened. She had seen cruelty before, but it still made her blood rise. The old man's face turned red with shame. His fingers trembled harder as he dropped a few coins on the counter. They rolled away, clinking on the tile floor. The waiter picked them up and laughed. What's this? You think this covers coffee? Maybe go beg outside, huh? The cafe burst into low murmurs, half amusement, half discomfort. Some people looked away. Others smiled at the waiter's words like they were part of a sick show. Selena's stomach twisted in anger. The old man lowered his head, his gray hair falling over his face, as if he wanted to disappear into the floor. Selena could not look away. The world felt wrong, tilted, broken. She wanted to stand, to shout, but she hesitated. She had fought so many battles for strangers before. Was this another one she was ready to lose? Then, just as the waiter pushed the old man's wallet back across the counter with a smirk, the cafe door swung open. A tall man stepped inside. The air changed instantly. His shoulders were squared, his eyes sharp, his steps steady like someone who had walked into many battles before. Conversation stopped. Coffee cups froze midair. Selena's eyes darted to the old man, who still stood shaking at the counter. Then back to the man at the door, whose gaze had locked on him. The silence was thick, suffocating. And then, with one cold stare, the stranger broke it. Selena shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her heart beat faster, though nothing had yet been said. Something about the man who entered filled the cafe with weight. His presence was not loud, not violent, but it demanded respect. Her mind drifted briefly to her own story. She had chosen this cafe because she felt safe here, anonymous. She spent her days helping people who had nobody, old women left in nursing homes, men who had worked all their lives only to be forgotten, couples who grew old and invisible. Her job was heavy, but she did it because she understood pain. Her father had abandoned her family, leaving her to grow up fast. She remembered nights when her mother came home after midnight, hands blistered from cleaning offices. She remembered walking to school in shoes with holes, pretending not to notice the whispers of other kids. All that pain had shaped her into a woman who could not stomach cruelty. Back in the cafe, her eyes returned to the old man. He had finally found his wallet and opened it with great care. Inside was a single folded bill, wrinkled from too many pockets. His lips moved as though he were whispering a prayer. Selena wondered who he was, what life he had lived, and why it seemed so familiar. The waiter leaned across the counter, speaking in a voice dripping with mockery. "Is that it? $1? Sir, this isn't a charity. Maybe next time bring a piggy bank." Laughter erupted again, though weaker this time. Some people were embarrassed now, but no one stopped it. The old man's eyes glistened with shame. His shoulders sagged. Selena wanted to cry for him. He held the bill out with trembling fingers, almost begging the young man to take it. Selena clenched her jaw. She felt the memory of her own grandfather, a kind man who had died poor but proud. This stranger reminded her of him, the same sadness, the same quiet dignity. She leaned forward in her chair, ready to intervene, when she noticed something odd. The man at the door still hadn't moved. He was staring straight at the old man, his face unreadable. The old man shifted slightly, and their eyes nearly met. For a moment, something flickered across the stranger's face, something deep and unsettled. Selena's breath caught in her throat. The connection between them was strange, almost like recognition. She couldn't name it, but she felt it. And then, with a voice trembling but clear, the old man whispered, "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just wanted a coffee." The room went cold. The old man's words carried more pain than anger, more exhaustion than fight. He was not a man looking for pity. He was a man tired of proving his worth in a world that had long stopped seeing him. Selena studied him closer now. His hands were rough, the kind of hands that had worked decades, maybe building houses, maybe fixing cars, maybe carrying loads no one else wanted. His coat was old, his shirt faded, his shoes nearly done. He did not wear poverty like a shield. He wore like a scar. He whispered again, almost to himself, "She used to sit here with me, right there by the window." His voice cracked. Coffee was her favorite. Selena's chest tightened. Whoever she was, it was clear this place carried memory. He had come here not just for coffee, but for comfort, for the ghost of someone he loved. The waiter rolled his eyes, unimpressed. He snatched the wallet from the counter and flipped it open. Inside, only a faded photo of a woman and a child remained. He pulled it out, holding it up to the crowd. "Well, look at this. Family discount, huh? Too bad a picture can't pay for coffee." The cafe erupted in mixed reactions. A few chuckled nervously. Others shifted uncomfortably, ashamed but silent. Selena gasped. She wanted to leap from her seat, to tear the picture back, to shield the man from further humiliation. But before she could rise, the waiter dangled the photo higher, his smirk growing wider. The old man's eyes filled with tears. His lips quivered, but he said nothing. He only looked at the picture, like his whole world had just been ripped from him in front of strangers. Selena's heart pounded. She had to act. She couldn't sit there while cruelty swallowed the air. She pushed her chair back with force. But just as she stood, the waiter's hand tightened on the wallet. He shook it mockingly, the picture waving like a flag. And then, in one swift motion, he shoved the wallet into his own pocket. The room gasped. Selena froze, her fists clenching. The old man's face crumpled, the last shred of his dignity stripped from him in plain view. The waiter smirked, enjoying his power. Selena's voice rang out before she could stop herself. Enough. Her chair scraped loudly across the floor as she stood tall. All eyes turned to her. Her heart raced, but her voice was steady. Give him his wallet back. Right now. The waiter laughed, spinning to face her. And who are you, his lawyer? Sit down, lady. You don't want to get involved. Selena's face burned red. I said give it back. You've embarrassed him enough. Do you even realize how cruel you're being? The crowd shifted uneasily. Some avoided her gaze. Others looked impressed. A few even nodded silently. But no one else spoke. The waiter smirked wider. Cruel? Lady, I'm teaching him a lesson. Old man like this should know better than to waste people's time. If he can't afford coffee, he doesn't belong here. Selena's voice trembled, not from fear, but from fury. You think mocking someone makes you strong? It makes you small. The waiter stepped closer, his face inches from hers, his voice low but sharp. Go ahead. Report me. My boss doesn't care. This old man is trash, and you'll be just another voice no one listens to. Gasps rippled through the cafe. Selena's jaw dropped. Her breath caught, and then a slow, steady voice cut through the silence. Put that wallet down. Every head turned toward the door. The tall man who had entered earlier now stepped forward. His face was calm, but his tone carried a chill that froze the waiter mid-smirk. The cafe seemed to shrink as he approached the counter. Each step was deliberate, heavy with purpose. His eyes locked on the waiter, then shifted to the old man trembling beside him. Selena watched in awe. The man's presence filled the room, not loud, not violent, but absolute. Even the waiter's grin faltered as he held the wallet tighter, unsure of himself now. The stranger stopped just a few feet away. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened with a look that made the waiter swallow hard. Put it down, he repeated, each word sharp as glass. The old man's lips parted, his breath catching. Selena leaned forward, her pulse quickening. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. The waiter forced a laugh. And what if I don't? The stranger stepped closer. His voice dropped, deep and steady, heavy with something more than anger, something personal. That man, he said, pointing to the trembling figure, is my father. The cafe froze in disbelief. You could feel it. Every eye wide, every breath held, every thought crashing into one truth. The man humiliated in front of strangers wasn't just some poor old man. He was the father of the cafe's owner. The waiter's hand shook slightly as he clutched the wallet, his smirk thinning. Customers leaned forward, their curiosity burning hotter than the coffee in their cups. Selena's chest thudded. She had defended strangers before, but this twist made her wonder what secrets lived in this room. The old man, Thomas, stared at the floor, shame written across his face. He didn't smile with relief, didn't even look at his son. Instead, his lips pressed into a thin, tight line. Selena's heart broke. This was not pride, this was embarrassment. Ethan, the tall man, stepped closer, his calm voice like thunder rolling. You will give him that wallet. You will do it now. The waiter, desperate to save face, sneered. What's the big deal? He's just. The words stuck in his throat. He realized it. He realized this wasn't some stranger. This was the man who had given life to the one who signed his paychecks. And yet, in his arrogance, he had spat on him. The silence pressed heavier. The cafe's walls felt too small, too suffocating to hold the weight of this moment. Selena's pulse raced. Customers whispered. Some looked guilty for laughing earlier. Then Ethan's jaw hardened, his eyes flashing. You're fired. Right now. Leave before I throw you out. The words hit the air like glass shattering. The waiter's face twisted, first in shock, then in rage. He slammed the wallet on the counter, his voice rising. You're gonna regret this. The cafe gasped as he stormed out, shoving chairs, his fury spilling everywhere. The old man still didn't look up. Ethan stood motionless, breathing heavy. Selena leaned forward, sensing the story wasn't finished. Because in that silence, Father and son didn't even meet each other's eyes. The fired waiter's footsteps faded outside, but his anger lingered in the cafe like smoke after a fire. Everyone whispered now, but no one dared to leave. They wanted to see what came next. People love drama when it isn't their own. Ethan kept staring at the counter, his chest rising and falling. The crowd wanted him to say something, to comfort his father, to show warmth. But he didn't. He stayed stiff, his eyes fixed on the trembling old man. Selena watched closely. Her heart tugged harder. There was history here, a wound deeper than today's humiliation. It wasn't just a son protecting his father. It was something heavier, something unspoken. The old man finally lifted his head. His eyes glistened, but his voice was steady. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want a scene. Ethan's jaw clenched. A scene? Dad, he mocked you. He robbed you. Thomas's lips trembled. And now you've shamed me more than he did. The room stirred. People exchanged shocked glances. Selena's throat tightened. What kind of pain could make a father reject his son's defense? What kind of pride made suffering more bearable than protection? The waiter's absence left a crack in the story, but the tension didn't leave. Ethan's voice lowered, almost like a growl. You think standing there and letting him humiliate you is strength? You think silence is dignity? Thomas's voice broke, heavy with sorrow. I think you don't know what dignity is. The room gasped softly, like the walls themselves had been insulted. Selena's chest burned. She couldn't breathe in the weight of their pain. And then, with a trembling voice that carried the sound of an old wound tearing open, Thomas whispered, I wish your mother was here to see what you've become. The cafe erupted in whispers. Those words hit harder than anything the waiter had said. The pain in Thomas's voice was raw, cutting, final. Ethan's face twisted, not in anger, but in something deeper, hurt, guilt, fury, all tangled together. Selena leaned forward, frozen between wanting to look away and not being able to. She had seen fights between families before, but this one carried a different kind of fire. It wasn't loud, it wasn't violent. It was sharp and cold, like a blade pressed against the skin of memory. Ethan's fists curled at his sides. His lips parted, but no words came. He looked at his father, as if the air had been ripped from his lungs. He turned away suddenly, his steps quick, his shoulders tight. Without another word, he stormed out of the cafe. The crowd was left in stunned silence. Thomas lowered back in his chair, his breathing uneven, his hands still trembling. He pulled the wallet close, his fingers tracing the faded photo inside. His eyes watered, but no tears fell. Selena wanted to reach for him, to offer comfort. Instead, she sat, her heart aching, realizing she was in the middle of something far more broken than a rude waiter. Finally, Thomas spoke, his voice low but clear enough for Selena to hear. He resents me, for what I couldn't give, for what I failed to be. Selena whispered softly, he came for you. That means something. Thomas shook his head, his eyes distant. No, it means he came for his own pride, not for me. The cafe grew heavier. Customers slowly slipped out, uncomfortable with a story that had gone from entertainment to tragedy. Selena stayed, but just outside the window, the fired waiter lingered. His eyes burned with anger, his phone pressed to his ear. Selena's stomach dropped. Trouble was not finished with this cafe. Night fell heavy on Oak Ridge, and the cafe sat in uneasy quiet. Selena finally left, but her mind stayed behind, replaying the faces of father and son, both drowning in different kinds of pain. She thought of her own father, the one who left, and wondered if wounds like these ever healed. Across the street, the fired waiter stood with a group of rough men. They laughed, smoked, and passed a bottle between them. But his eyes never stopped staring at the cafe. Inside, Thomas sat alone. He hadn't gone home. He sat at the same table where he once sat with his late wife. His lips moved as though he were speaking to her, though no sound carried. Selena passed by the window, debating whether to enter again, but she stopped when she saw him bow his head, shoulders heavy with loneliness. She couldn't bring herself to intrude. Instead, she walked home, her thoughts restless. At that same moment, Ethan sat in a dim bar across town, a glass of whiskey untouched in front of him. His reflection in the mirror above the shelf showed a man who had built success but lost something greater. He clenched his jaw, remembering his father's words, feeling the ghost of his mother between them. Meanwhile, outside the cafe, the waiter made a promise to the man beside him. He fired me in front of everyone. He humiliated me. That place is going down. One of the men grinned, showing a mouth of broken teeth. Say the word, kid. We'll take care of it. Selena, tossing in her bed that night, didn't know that while she struggled with memories of her father, a storm was already moving toward the cafe. And by morning, the sound of breaking glass would wake the town. The sun hadn't fully risen when Selena's phone buzzed with a message. It was short, urgent. Come quick. The cafe's been hit. She threw on her coat, rushing into the crisp morning air. When she arrived, her breath caught. Windows shattered, glass scattered across the sidewalk, spray-painted words screaming insults across the cafe's brick walls. Chairs overturned, tables broken. Thomas stood outside, his hand over his mouth, staring at the wreckage. His eyes looked hollow, as if he had lost the cafe itself, not just its windows. Ethan stood beside him, anger boiling under his skin. Selena approached carefully, her voice soft. Who would do this? Ethan's jaw tightened. I know who. The police arrived, taking photos, asking questions. But Ethan wasn't looking at them. He was looking at the spray-painted message scrawled across the wall. Old trash doesn't belong here. The crowd gathered again, whispers cutting like knives. Some shook their heads in pity. Others smirked as though drama entertained them more than compassion. Selena clenched her fists, shame burning in her chest. The officer turned to Ethan. You've got enemies. You need to be careful. But Ethan wasn't listening. He was watching his father, who knelt slowly, his trembling hands picking up broken glass with bare fingers, bleeding but silent. Selena rushed forward to stop him. Don't. You'll hurt yourself. Thomas looked at her, his eyes tired but filled with stubborn pride. It's my mess. I'll clean it. Selena's throat tightened. She looked at Ethan, waiting for him to help, waiting for him to see the man in front of him. And then, in the broken shards, Ethan found something else. A folded piece of paper tucked beneath the wreckage. He picked it up slowly, opening it with shaking hands. The words were written in red ink. This is only the beginning. The cafe stood in ruins, and the town buzzed with whispers. But here's the truth. When glass shatters, it's not just windows that break. Trust shatters too. That morning, Ethan walked through the wreckage with tight fists. Customers passing by slowed to stare. Some shook their heads in pity. Others smirked like they had just been given free theater. The spray-painted words still glared from the wall. Old trash doesn't belong here. Thomas sat on a chair inside, staring at the floor. His eyes carried the weight of a man who had lived long enough to see dignity stolen twice in 1 week. Selena stood nearby, torn between rage at the attackers and sorrow for the father who couldn't even look at his son. Dad, stop blaming yourself, Ethan muttered, sweeping up shards with force. His voice cracked with anger more than care. But Thomas shook his head. This place was built for your mother. She loved it here. Now it's nothing but shame. The words struck hard. Selena saw Ethan freeze. For a moment, his hand stopped moving, his jaw tightening as though Thomas's words had reopened an old scar. The police returned later with a warning. The men involved were dangerous. They told Ethan to consider shutting the place down until things calmed. But Ethan refused. This cafe is my mother's memory. They won't take that from me. Thomas only sighed, rubbing the photo in his wallet like it was a prayer card. His silence cut deeper than the spray-painted insults. And then, as the afternoon sun slanted through broken glass, Ethan bent down and spotted something wedged beneath a table leg. A scrap of paper, folded once. He opened it, eyes narrowing at the red words scrawled inside. It was a note, written in the same hand as before. Tomorrow, you'll lose more than windows. Fear has a way of crawling under skin, but here's the thing. Pride often shouts louder than fear. The morning after the note, Ethan met with police, who confirmed the threat wasn't empty. These men won't stop until they've humiliated you, the officer warned. And if your father keeps showing up here, he'll be their target. Selena sat across from Ethan, her eyes firm. You need to protect him. This isn't just about a business anymore. Ethan leaned back, his face pale but stubborn. If I close this cafe, I'll let them win. I'll let them erase my mother's memory. Thomas, who had been quiet all morning, suddenly spoke. Don't put this on her. Your mother wouldn't have wanted blood spilled for coffee. His words carried sharpness, and the room chilled. Selena tried to bridge the silence. What if you rebuilt the cafe into something more? Something that honored her, but also helped others like Thomas? Ethan's eyes softened for a second, but his pride pulled him back. I'm not turning this place into charity. The words sliced through the air. Thomas's face fell, his voice trembling. Then maybe you don't deserve her memory. Selena gasped. The officer stood awkwardly, sensing a family war boiling hotter than the crime at hand. But before anyone could speak again, the cafe door swung open. A group of men walked in, bold, laughing as though the cafe was theirs now. Their leader grinned at Thomas. Back again, old man. Didn't you get the message? The cafe went silent. Customers froze mid-sip, mid-bite. The thugs swaggered toward Thomas, their boots heavy against the tile. Selena's heart thudded. Ethan's hand clenched into a fist, but he stayed still, waiting, watching. The leader leaned over Thomas, sneering. You don't belong here. You hear me? People like you ruin places like this. His voice was loud enough for the whole cafe to hear. Some customers lowered their heads, embarrassed but unwilling to intervene. Selena's chest burned. She wanted to scream. Instead, she stood, her voice shaking but firm. Leave him alone. Haven't you done enough? The men laughed, brushing her off. One leaned toward her, eyes cruel. Lady, sit down before you get hurt. But Selena didn't move. She raised her voice louder, speaking to the customers instead. Why are you all silent? You see what's happening. Are you going to let it? How many times do we let cruelty happen right in front of us and do nothing? Her words cut through the room. For the first time, heads lifted. Some customers nodded, uneasy but encouraged. The thug smirked, unimpressed. He shoved Thomas's shoulder. The old man toppled backward, his chair scraping loud across the floor. Gasps erupted. Ethan moved instantly, catching his father before he fell. His voice broke through the noise. That's enough. But the leader only laughed harder, pulling a chair and sitting at a table like he owned the place. Oh, it's just getting started. And then one of them reached into his jacket. The glint of a blade caught the light. A knife. Customers screamed, pushing toward the door. The cafe filled with panic, the sound of shuffling feet, overturned chairs. Selena's pulse pounded in her ears. She stepped forward without thinking, her voice rising above the chaos. You think this makes you men? Threatening an old man in a cafe full of people? You're cowards. The leader's grin faltered for just a second. Customers, hearing Selena's words, stopped rushing out. Some froze at the door, torn between fear and shame. Ethan placed himself in front of his father, shielding him with his body. His jaw was clenched, his fists ready, though Selena could see the fear in his eyes. The thug with the knife waved it threateningly. One step closer, and the old man bleeds. Thomas, surprisingly, pushed against Ethan's shoulder and stood tall, his frail body trembling, but his voice steady. No, you don't scare me. I've lived too long to bow to punks with blades. The room hushed. Selena's eyes widened. Even the thug seemed thrown off by the sudden defiance. Ethan looked at his father, shock in his face. For the first time, pride flickered behind his fear. But the thug snarled, shoving Thomas back. The knife gleamed closer now. Selena reached for her phone, her voice cracking as she shouted, "Somebody call 911. Now!" And then the knife was raised higher, ready to strike. Chaos erupted. Ethan lunged, wrapping his arm around his father, shielding him from the blade. The thug's knife slashed through the air, missing by inches. Customers screamed louder, some ducking under tables. Selena's voice trembled as she shouted into her phone, "Please hurry. There's a knife. Send police now." The leader cursed, shoving chairs aside as the others surrounded Ethan and Thomas. For a moment, it looked like the cafe would drown in violence. Thomas, gasping for air, suddenly found his voice. He straightened his back, eyes blazing with a dignity no insult could erase. "I'm not trash. I built this town with my hands. I raised a son who owns this place. And you're nothing but shadows." The room froze. Even the thugs hesitated, the weight of his words hitting harder than fists. Ethan looked at his father with wide eyes, seeing him not as a burden, but as a man who had carried more strength than anyone realized. But the knife didn't lower. The thug snarled, pressing forward again. And then, sirens, red and blue lights, flashed outside the cafe windows. Tires screeched. Doors slammed. Police stormed in, shouting commands. The thugs cursed, dropping chairs and scrambling. But the leader, knife still in hand, glared one last time at Thomas. "This isn't over, old man." Police grabbed him, wrenching the blade away, dragging him out as customers cheered in relief. But the victory was short-lived, because in the middle of the cafe, Thomas clutched his chest and fell. Here's the moment that silenced the cafe. Thomas lay on the ground, his hand clutching his chest. His face twisted in pain, his breath shallow. The cheers from the crowd had turned into panicked cries. Selena dropped beside him, tears already streaming. "Stay with us, Thomas. Please stay with us." Ethan froze for a second, then snapped into action, pressing his hands against his father's chest. "Dad, breathe. Don't you dare leave me now." The cafe that had been filled with hate now trembled with fear. Customers crowded, some shouting for space, others pulling out their phones. The sirens outside echoed like a cruel countdown. Thomas's lips moved, but his words were faint. Ethan bent close, his own tears spilling. "What is it, Dad? Tell me." Thomas's voice rasped, broken yet steady. "Don't let this cafe be only about me. Make it about everyone who feels unseen." Ethan's throat tightened. His father's plea wasn't just about survival. It was a request for legacy. Paramedics rushed in, lifting Thomas onto a stretcher. His frail hand reached out, brushing Ethan's cheek. Then his eyes closed, and his body went limp. The stretcher wheeled out, flashing lights chasing it into the night. And Ethan stood there, frozen, as the cafe doors swung shut. Hospitals are strange places. They smell like bleach, but the air is heavy with hope and dread. Ethan paced the waiting room, his hands running through his hair again and again. Selena sat across from him, her voice calm but firm. "He's strong. He's made it through worse." But Ethan shook his head. "I wasted so many years blaming him. And now I might lose him before I can say I'm sorry." Selena leaned forward, her eyes steady. "You said enough when you shielded him with your body. He knows." A doctor walked in, and the entire room stilled. Ethan rushed forward. "Please tell me he's okay." The doctor hesitated before answering. "He's alive, but his heart is weak. We'll need to monitor him closely." Relief flooded the room, but it was heavy relief, weighed down with conditions. Later that night, Ethan slipped into Thomas's hospital room. Machines beeped quietly. His father's chest rose and fell with effort. Ethan sat beside him, tears finally breaking free. "I thought you were weak. I thought you were nothing but a reminder of what I lost. But tonight, I saw who you really are, and I'm proud to be your son." For a moment, Thomas stirred, his lips curling into the faintest smile. His hand weakly squeezed Ethan's. and then his monitor beeped louder. Nurses rushed in. Ethan stumbled back, terror flooding his chest. The screen flashed red. The line between life and death is thinner than we think. That night, it stretched thinner than ever. Nurses worked fast, shouting codes Ethan couldn't understand. Selena pulled him into the hallway, whispering prayers under her breath. Ethan's knees weakened, his breath ragged. "Please, God, don't take him now." Through the glass, he saw them pressing on his father's chest, forcing air into his lungs. Each second dragged like hours. Then, beep. A steady rhythm returned. The room sighed in relief. The doctor emerged minutes later, sweat on his brow. "He's stable. But Mr. Ward's heart can't take much more stress. You need to keep him away from conflict." Ethan nodded, but inside his chest tightened. The cafe wasn't just a business anymore. It was a battlefield. And his father couldn't survive another war. Selena touched his arm gently. "Maybe it's time to change how you fight. Not with fists, not with pride, but with purpose." That night, Ethan sat alone in the hospital chapel, staring at the flickering candlelight. His father's words echoed. "Make it about everyone who feels unseen." And in that silence, Ethan made a decision. The cafe wouldn't just reopen. It would transform. Weeks passed, and when the cafe reopened, it wasn't the same. The broken glass had been replaced with clear panes that gleamed. But more importantly, the sign above the door now carried a new name, the People's Cafe. Inside, walls were lined with photos, workers, single mothers, veterans, and yes, elders like Thomas. Each face told a story of resilience. Selena stood by Ethan's side during the opening. Customers poured in, drawn not just for coffee, but for belonging. Some came curious, others came emotional, many came because they'd heard whispers about a place built on dignity. Thomas, still frail but smiling, sat at the corner table. His presence drew attention, not as a victim, but as a symbol of survival. And here's the twist. The same waiter who had mocked him returned, eyes lowered, shame burning his face. I don't deserve to be here, but I want to make it right." The cafe hushed, waiting for Ethan's reaction. Ethan looked at his father, who nodded slowly. Then he turned back to the young man. "If you're here to mock, leave. But if you're here to work and learn respect, then you're welcome." The young waiter's lips trembled. He nodded, tears gathering. "I want to learn." The cafe applauded. But deep down, Ethan knew the story wasn't over. Because forgiveness is easy to say. Living it, that's the real challenge. And so here we are, a cafe once poisoned by cruelty, now pulsed with hope. But don't get twisted. This wasn't just about a building. It was about people. Thomas lived on, weaker in body but stronger in spirit. Selena stayed, her presence grounding Ethan when pride threatened to consume him. And Ethan himself? He finally became more than an owner. He became a son who understood what legacy really meant. The men who attacked the cafe faced charges. Some never looked back. Others came years later, humbled, asking for forgiveness. And the cafe kept serving not just coffee but dignity in every cup. Now, you might ask, what's the lesson? Here it is. Respect is the cheapest gift you can give, but the most priceless one to receive. And when you look down on someone, remember, you might just be mocking the very hand that built the ground you're standing on. Thomas's story wasn't about weakness. It was about strength disguised in wrinkles, in silence, in survival. And Ethan's story? It was about a man who had to lose everything to finally see the value of what he already had. So the next time you walk into a cafe, remember this. The person you ignore may carry a story that can change the world. Now, if this story touched you, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss another story that will move your heart. Because sometimes the stories we share are the mirrors we need.